Most people picture the Oregon coast the same way. Sea stacks, fog, Highway 101. That is the coast everyone knows. Almost nobody gets past it. Walk north at Oceanside and the sand runs out at a headland, with the best beach on that stretch on the far side and no way around it. The water turns stranger the further up you go. A mile off Tillamook Head stands a tower nobody has entered in decades, and it is not empty. Head back south and the ocean starts handing things over. Twice a day at Neskowin the tide falls away and a forest comes back, older than any town in the state. That grove is not the only one down there. More than 30 are buried along this shore. Stay with me as we uncover the hidden wonders of the Oregon coast. Places so unreal, they might just change the way you see this shoreline forever. Every beach in Oregon belongs to the public, surf to treeline. That law came from a fight at Cannon Beach, where a motel owner walled off sand with driftwood. The town is named for a cannon that spent a century lost in the sand. A girl out walking with her father finally spotted 2 more of them. An earthquake in Alaska sent a wave across the ocean overnight and tore out the bridge. 4 residents answered with a sandcastle contest to coax visitors back. Kitchens along the street ladle chowder thick with clams dug from this beach. The crowds all drift toward one thing, a monolith on the flat sand called Haystack Rock. The lava that made it erupted far inland and ran clear across the state to the sea. It never settled on the seafloor either. It sank into the mud and pushed back up. Puffins burrow into its grassy summit each spring. They fly underwater after fish and bring them back crosswise in the bill, several at a time. Their numbers have fallen sharply here and at colonies from British Columbia to Japan. Climbing past the barnacle line is against the law, and nothing living may be carried off. Tide pools ringing its base fill with orange and purple in every crack. Ochre sea stars pry muscles open there and push their stomachs out through their mouths. Scientists once cleared these stars off ashore, watched mussels take everything, and coined the phrase keystone species. Low tide does something stranger farther south, where the Neskowin ghost forest surfaces from the sand. Stumps of Sitka spruce break the surf, encrusted with barnacles and mussels. Winter storms scoured the sand away and uncovered the whole grove in a single season. Salt water and mud had sealed the wood off from the fungus that should have rotted it. A Cascadia earthquake may have dropped this shore into the tide within seconds. One later quake on that fault sent a wave clear to Japan, where scribes wrote it down in confusion. Proposal Rock rises just offshore, with spruce on its crown, named for a sea captain's engagement. Waves have been carving the headland at Otter Rock for far longer. Two sea caves merged under that headland, and Devil's Punchbowl opened when the roof dropped in. On a storm tide, the Pacific pours in through two arches and churns. At low tide, the floor drains, and a round room of banded rock opens to the sky. Settlers called it Satan's Cauldron until the state renamed it. Daring surfers have timed a massive wave to shoot straight through the archway into the Punchbowl. Tide pools spread across the shelf to the north, but the black oyster catcher never leaves the rock. Pale pink legs carry it over the wet shelf, while a blade red bill probes every crack. The name is misleading, because it almost never touches an oyster. It jabs the muscle that holds a muscle open, then works limpets off the rock. Waves force it up mid-meal, because it feeds exactly where the surf lands. Its whistle carries over the noise of the water. Both parents keep feeding the chicks for weeks, which almost no other shorebird does. It never leaves the rocks, and neither did the keepers stationed on the islet off Gregory Point. Cape Arago Lighthouse rises white and octagonal above the surf, the third tower built on that rock. The Coos named the island Chief's Island, and settlers renamed it Lighthouse Island. Storms smashed every bridge, so keepers rode the channel instead. A cable tramway replaced the boats, then snapped mid-crossing and cost a keeper his leg. The Coast Guard asked whether any mariner still needed the light, heard nothing back, and switched it off. Chief's Island returned to the confederated tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians. Crews took the bridge down afterward, but a road cut into rock still curves around Hug Point. Wagon ruts scar the rock shelf here, uncovered whenever the tide drops. Before Highway 101, this beach was the road, and wagons hugged the point to get past. Crews blasted a roadway into the cliff, and the highway made it useless within decades. A waterfall drops onto the sand beside it. Heceta Head Lighthouse outlasted that road, and people still argue over who haunts the keeper's house. The tower rises halfway up a headland north of Florence, white against dark forested cliffs. Its beam reaches farther out to sea than any other light on this coast. It may be the most photographed lighthouse in the country. The keeper's Queen Anne house behind it takes guests as an inn. A workman cleaning the attic window saw a grey-haired woman reflected behind him. He fled, and days later he broke that window from outside and left the glass where it fell. Something swept it into a neat pile overnight, and the innkeepers called her the Grey Lady. Every postcard shot of this place from the south is framed by the span below. Cape Creek Bridge carries Highway 101 on 2 tiers of arches, like a Roman aqueduct. Conde McCullough designed it, along with most bridges on this highway. Road crews bored a tunnel through the headland while it went up. Money went into this piece of road so fast that people called it the $1 Million Mile. That highway climbs onto the highest point a car can reach on this coast. Cape Perpetua. Scenic area drops straight from spruce forest into open surf. Captain Cook named it from his ship for a saint's day and never once came ashore. A stone shelter from the depression tops the summit, ringed by old-growth spruce. Its basalt shelf takes the worst of the Pacific, and Thor's Well is why photographers come. The hole opened when the roof of a sea cave gave way under the rock here. Water surges up the chamber at high tide and bursts over the rim. It drains back down in a spiral, then refills within seconds. nothing about it is actually bottomless. On a slack low tide, it looks like nothing more than a puddle in the rock. Winter storms throw spray higher than the trees on the headland behind. Sneaker waves are the real danger, and rangers have logged visitors knocked flat on the rock. Another headland up this coast kept its roof on, and the noise underneath never stops. Sea Lion Caves is the largest sea cave in America. It is the only mainland rookery Steller sea lions use in the lower states. A sea captain rowed in one afternoon, got trapped by the weather, and ate sea lion flippers to survive. An elevator now drops through solid rock to a ledge inside the dark. They abandon the cave each summer for the open rocks, and Fort Stevens holds the state's last corner. Guns have covered the mouth of the Columbia from this ground since the Civil War. Clatsop Spit runs out to the river in a long reach of beech and shore pine. Freshwater lagoons pool behind the foredune. Vessels have been breaking apart on the bar out there since the first crews tried to find the river. Sailors name the water the graveyard of the Pacific. Barbed wire went down the whole beach against an invasion that never came. One wreck on the park's own sand stayed tangled in that wire until the war ended. The Peter Iredale drove onto Clatsop Spit in a squall while waiting for a pilot. Every man aboard reached shore alive, along with 2 stowaways nobody knew about. Her captain saluted the wreck, wished her bones would bleach in the sand, and passed round the whiskey. Surf has stripped her to a cage of ribs. Rust finished the ship, and a gun emplacement in the woods called Battery Russell is losing to the forest. A Japanese submarine surfaced offshore one night and shelled the fort in the dark. Most of the shells hit a swamp and a baseball backstop, and the guns here never answered. Nothing like it had happened since the war that burned the White House. Razor clams live upright in the wet sand, with a siphon poking out at the surface. Diggers read the surface for a dimple the size of a nickel. The clam senses the shovel and digs down faster than most people can follow. A clam gun pulls a core of wet sand straight up. Oregon coast sand dunes take over farther on, and no tide reaches any of it. Wind-carved ridges make up the largest dune field in the country. Islands of shore pine and spruce are stranded out in the open sand. The wind rewrites the ridgelines nightly. Sand once swallowed roads, rail lines, and houses around Florence. The Forest Service planted European beach grass to pin the dunes down. Frank Herbert flew over that project, saw a desert eating a town, and wrote Dune. The grass worked too well, and the open sand keeps shrinking. Sand keeps losing ground here, but Cape Lookout has held its shape as solid basalt. Mapmakers meant this name for a different headland, and nobody ever corrected the mistake. Forest runs right to the cliff edge, and the trail follows the spine out over open water. No headland on the northern coast reaches farther into open water. Whales pass directly below the tip of the cape on migration. Fog can hide the trail for days. A bomber on coastal patrol flew into the south face in exactly that fog. 9 men died and rescuers needed a full day to reach the one survivor. A plaque on the trail carries their names, and their route ended at the mouth of the Columbia. Astoria started as a fur post, the oldest American town west of the Rockies. Victorian houses climb a hillside so steep that some streets give up and turn into stairs. Canneries here once called the place the salmon capital of the world. Fire broke out downtown one winter night, and the pavement began collapsing. The whole business district had been built on wooden pilings, so the fire came from underneath. A retired gillnet boat parked downtown sells fish and chips cut from albacore tuna. Rail money paid for the tower on the highest hill, and it is called the Astoria Column. A spiral mural wraps the concrete from base to top, the only frieze of its kind. Artists carved the images into wet plaster, an Italian method that hates rain. The painter hung off the side in a swinging scaffold and scrapped any day's work he disliked. Visitors throw balsa gliders from the top, aimed at the steel crossing that ends in another state. The Astoria-Megler Bridge was designed to hold against wind that could strip a roof off a house. It is the longest continuous truss bridge in North America. Ferries had crossed here for decades, cancelled by fog and tide, whenever the river felt like it. Critics called it the bridge to nowhere and said the tolls would never cover it. A gale tore a crane off the works, and tugboats fished it out of a log jam downriver. Traffic proved them wrong, and the last toll came off on Christmas Eve. Its opening finished Highway 101 as one unbroken run from Mexico all the way to Canada. Cape Meares needs no tall tower at all, because the cliff underneath supplies the height. Two men shot out the lantern glass and wrecked prisms in the lens. A judge made them serve it in pieces, on the anniversary, year after year. Behind it grows the octopus tree, its limbs trained outward to cradle canoes holding the dead. Seabirds crowd the cliffs below, while a town farther south watches the ocean come over its highway. Depoe Bay keeps its harbour behind a slot in the basalt, and boats thread it one at a time. Crews wait for a lull between swells, then gun the throttle through the gap. The town took its name from Charles Depoe, a Siletz man, allotted this land. Seawater fires up through holes in the rock along Main Street and rains down on the traffic. Spouts rise between the fishing boats most of the year, from animals crusted with barnacles and lice. Grey whales feed off this seawall, from spring through fall. They belong to a group that skips the Arctic entirely. Whalers called them devilfish because a harpooned mother would turn and smash the boat. Hunters nearly wiped them out twice, and they came back both times. Each one rolls onto its side and sucks mud straight off the bottom. Coarse plates in the upper jaw strain out shrimp and worms, and the mud goes back out. Feeding whales leave long brown trails and round pits on the seafloor. Salt water feeds every one of them, but the Rogue River carries mail no truck can reach. French trappers named it for the people they met here, using a word closer to scoundrel. Congress protected it among the first rivers in the country. The first carrier took 4 days to push a wooden boat upstream with poles and oars. Boats still run that route 6 days a week, the oldest such service in America. Jet boats leave Gold Beach daily now for a canyon with no roads. The Isaac Lee Patterson Bridge carries the highway over the mouth in a string of concrete arches. Far upriver near Prospect, a tributary ends by falling off the canyon rim into this current. Mill Creek Falls comes off a wall of hardened ash from the eruption that made Crater Lake. House-sized boulders from that blast choke the river below. Upstream, the whole river drops into a lava tube and reappears further down. Water off this cliff joins a current that fills with boats after Chinook salmon each season. Spring fish arrive early and hold in cold headwater pools until September. Fall fish come later and spawn lower down, so the two runs rarely overlap. They stop eating the moment they enter fresh water and live off their own bodies. Dams blocked the way for a century, and one killed up to a fifth of the young fish. Crews finally tore those dams out, and the river ran free for the first time in living memory. Reds appeared within a few years on gravel that had been buried under silt. A fish duck works the shallows above those nests, hunting by sight. Common mergansers fly the river in low lines and settle in loose rafts. Their bills carry rows of backward teeth for gripping a live fish. Anglers call them sawbills for exactly that reason. They nest in tree holes, and the ducklings jump out within a day of hatching. Tired chicks ride on the hen's back straight through the current. These ducks follow fresh water to the coast, and Bandon grew where one river finally reaches it. The town burned to the ground in a single night, with half of it inside the movie theatre. Its founder had planted gorse from his native Ireland, and the place was full of it. gorse burns like a grease fire, so water only threw flaming clumps further out. "11 people died and most of the buildings with them. Growers here flooded their bogs first, and the wet cranberry harvest spread from this coast. A creamery on the old cheese factory site makes cheddar by hand. The beach below runs through a crowd of monoliths, and one of them is Face Rock. The profile of a woman lies out in the surf, staring straight up. Coquille families tell of Yaquina, a chief's daughter who swam at night against every warning. An ocean spirit whose power ran through his eyes caught her. She kept her eyes on the moon, and he threw her dog and its kittens in beside her. The river beside them carries a red and white tower at its mouth. The Coquille River Lighthouse was the last light the government built in Oregon. Its shape appears on no other West Coast lighthouse. Sand shifted across the bar so badly that captains gave up on the river. It went dark young, and the Coast Guard moved its beacon out to the jetty and left. Crews rebuilt the shell later, so the tower now keeps no light at all. Cape Blanco holds a light that never went dark, out on the last of Oregon's land. Wind crosses this headland almost without stopping. It combs the grass flat, and the gusts rank among the strongest anywhere on this coast. Spanish sailors named the White Cape, and no name here may be older. Black reefs scatter the water underneath, and the Sixes River empties on the north flank. An Irish rancher built a Victorian house above the river and shipped his butter out by boat. Sheep once grazed the terraces between the two rivers in large herds. A brick tower marks the tip, put up by hands that made the bricks on site. Cape Blanco Lighthouse still turns, and no older one in Oregon is working. One keeper stayed so long that he outlasted every other keeper on the west coast. Oregon's first woman lighthouse keeper took charge here. Ships needed the warning, though Pacific City became the valley's nearest door to open ocean. No jetty and no harbour exist here, only sand and breaking surf. Dorymen push flat-bottom boats out through the breakers and drop the motor once it clears. Coming home, a boat rides a wave onto the beach and slides to a stop on its hull. A cape to the north blocks the wind and makes that landing possible at all. Cape Kiwanda is the only sandstone headland on a coast built of black basalt. Surf has cut its layers into ledges, blowholes, and collapsing arches. A giant dune climbs the southern flank. The duckbill made this the most photographed spot in the park. A group climbed past the safety rope, shoved it over on purpose, and a drone filmed everything. Basalt handles weather better, which is why Chief Kiwanda Rock is still out there. That stack is the largest on the Oregon coast, and it dwarfs the famous one up north. A keyhole opens straight through its north face. Basalt pushed up through softer rock here long ago. Federal protection covers it along with the rest of the offshore rocks. The name honours a Neskowin chief who lived on this shore. Seabirds own the top of it, while one cliff south takes waves that fall like rain on a garden. Shore Acres was the estate of a timber baron who imported plants by the shipload. His mansion burned on the 4th of July, and the crash finished its replacement. Formal beds, rose gardens, and a lily pond outlasted them. Nobody grows flowers at Newport, where an aquarium once kept the orca from Free Willy. Fishing boats still unload here on a bayfront that never turned into a gift shop row. Processing plants outnumber the souvenir stores along the water. A woman named Mo opened a diner on these docks and fed loggers around the clock. The chowder came later and made her a legend. Federal research ships moor across the bay, home ported here instead of any bigger city. One green steel arch carries the highway over the bay entrance, above all of it. The Yaquina Bay Bridge is the one McCullough is remembered for above all his others. He believed a public bridge should be worth looking at, not merely worth crossing. Concrete Depoe towers and arched approaches flank the span. Federal relief money paid for it during the worst of the Depression. Ships pass underneath without ever slowing down. Coastal tourism jumped by 2/3 the year after the bridge and its siblings opened. Crab boats share the water with animals that outweigh a grand piano. California sea lions took over these docks and never left. Almost everyone is male. Females stay south through the year, raising pups in warmer water. The barking runs day and night without a pause, carrying the whole length of the bayfront. So many pile onto the floats that the docks ride low. Trucks cross it loaded with fish, but the Dungeness crab pays for the winter here. Crabbers stack pots on the docks and haul dripping rings off the piers. The season opens December 1st when the shells are hard and the meat has filled in. Only males over 6 1/4 inches can be kept, and every female goes back. Flat concrete suits them, but the Samuel H. Boardman State Scenic Corridor offers nothing flat at all. The wildest coastline in Oregon runs along the state's southern edge. Sitka spruce lean out over the cliff edges, bent flat by the wind. Trails drop through rainforest to beaches reachable no other way. The first superintendent of Oregon's parks spent a working lifetime buying this land piece by piece. He wanted a national park here, took the idea to Washington, and was turned down. The state kept the ground instead. One viewpoint along here gets photographed more than all the rest. The natural bridges are what a sea cave roof leaves when it falls in. 7 arches and blowholes ring the cove, framed by wind-bent spruce. Water inside the cove reads turquoise on a bright day. A cliff-top platform looks straight down onto the spans and the water beneath. The state warns people not to climb out onto them. These arches are not the only span here, and Thomas Creek Bridge hides in the trees up the road. Most drivers cross without ever learning how far below the creek runs. The road never dips into the gorge, so the deck rides higher than any other bridge in Oregon. 2 small pullouts are the only place to see how far down it goes. Forest fills the canyon under it, and dairy country begins where the forest finally gives out. Tillamook spreads across flat green pasture where 5 rivers empty into one bay. Dairy cattle outnumber people here. Farmers built their own schooner to get butter over the mountains. That ship still sails on the cheese label today. Dozens of small factories once dotted the county before 10 of them banded together. The co-op still makes cheddar from a recipe a Canadian cheesemaker carried in. Fire burned the forests behind town 4 times over 2 decades. A resort city once filled the spit at the bay mouth, and its name was Bay Ocean. Promoters sold it as the Atlantic City of the West. Residents paid for a jetty to smooth the boat trip in. The current shifted, and the sea took the swimming hall, the hotel, and the houses. Its last house dropped into the water, and the biggest building in the valley never got wet. The Tillamook Air Museum fills a blimp hangar the Navy put up in a hurry during the war. Wartime rationing meant steel was spoken for, so the whole thing is wood. Clouds have been known to form inside it, high up under the roof. McCullough Memorial Bridge answers with steel, and the engineer behind it got his name on it. The span across Coos Bay is the longest he ever built. He designed every major bridge on this highway, and Central America hired him to do theirs. It shelters the largest natural harbour between San Francisco and the Columbia. Log rafts still float on the bay, and ships tie up to load timber for export. Steel did this job, but one point up the coast is paved with round black stone instead. Yaquina Head Lighthouse rises at the end of a long black basalt finger. Legend has a workman falling into the hollow wall and never climbing back out of it. Its lens came from Paris by ship and was hauled overland across Panama. Records still carry its first name, taken from a cape it was never built on. Round black stones pave the beach below, and their clatter is drowned out by the common murrah. They pack the rocks below so tightly that the stone disappears underneath them. Each pair lays a single egg straight onto bare rock, with no nest at all. The egg is pointed at one end, so it pivots in place instead of rolling off the ledge. Chicks leap into the sea before they can fly and swim off with their fathers. An eagle overhead empties the colony in seconds, and a village south of here grew on a prison camp. Yachats holds a few hundred people where a river crosses a shelf of black basalt. Alsea families fished, smelt at this river mouth for 15 centuries. The army marched Coos and Lower Umpqua people north to a camp on this ground. They were held as prisoners on land that would not farm, and hundreds of them died. The town still fries smelt every summer, with fish brought in from elsewhere. No sand softens this shoreline, and Ecola State Park owns the most filmed view on this coast. The park's name comes from an old Chinook word for whale. Lewis and Clark crossed this headland to reach one stranded on the beach beyond. Their route is still walkable, and the trail carries their names. Offshore, the horizon holds the most expensive lighthouse this country ever built. Tillamook Rock. Lighthouse went up on a bare basalt island in open ocean. storms threw boulders through the lantern glass and left live fish inside the tower. Keepers called it Terrible Tilly, and a developer later gutted it and sold space inside for urns. Roosevelt elk hold the meadows back on the headland, well clear of all that water. Bulls run close to 1,000 pounds, the largest elk on the continent. Herds move through open grass above the sea. Bugling starts in September, a thin whistle that carries through fog. Grass like this ran out down the coast, where crews bury glass on the beach every winter. Lincoln City is 7 separate beach towns that voted to become one. The Dee River crosses from lake to ocean in a distance anyone can see end to end. Guinness called it the shortest on Earth, until Montana schoolkids found a shorter one. Crews hide hand-blown glass floats along the sand, every winter, one for each year of the calendar. Kite festivals fill that beach twice a year. A green knob of headland rises north of town, and hikers call it God's Thumb. It is the last piece of a basalt dike that once armoured this whole slope. Waves broke through it and scooped out the soft rock behind. In time the sea will cut it loose and leave it out there as a stack. A trail climbs through spruce forest and coastal meadow to reach it. Hikers finish on a user-made path that nobody maintains. The Coast Guard has hoisted injured people off the cliff face. Ocean falls away on 3 sides up there, while a wildlife refuge protects the marsh at the far end. Sealet's Bay is where the river widens into mudflats at the south end of town. Blackened stumps surface from the shallows at the lowest tides. They are the remains of a forest the ocean drowned, like the bigger grove up the coast. Mudflats fill and empty twice a day across the whole basin. Harbour seals own the bare middle of it and slide off at the first footstep. Speckled grey bodies lie in crescent rows on the mud, facing the water. They cannot walk on land at all. Hauling out means shuffling forward on the belly. Every coat carries a pattern, as individual as a fingerprint. Pups arrive in spring and can swim within hours of being born. A mother leaves her pup on the flats while she feeds offshore, and people mistake that for abandonment. Picking one up usually kills it because she will not return to a handled pup. Rocks suit them better up north, off a village whose stacks became the first bird refuge out west. Oceanside is a row of houses on a hillside above one short beach. Two young men rowed out and brought back photographs of hunters shooting seabirds for sport. Roosevelt saw them and signed the rocks into federal protection. Brothers blasted a tunnel through the headland so resort guests could reach the next beach. A landslide sealed it for 2 decades until a storm flushed the whole passage open again. Chowder counters are most of the business here, and Port Orford is the oldest town site on this coast. No bay, no jetty, and no safe moorage exist anywhere along this piece of shore. Quatuma people were killed defending this beach when settlers landed, more than 20 of them. The rock above that beach still carries the name Battle Rock. Cranes lift the entire fishing fleet out of the ocean every day instead. Crews land tuna, rockfish and urchins, and a shack on the dock fries the catch that afternoon. Open water starts right at the pier, and heavy seabirds drop into it, head first all afternoon. Brown pelicans raft in the hundreds off this port through summer and fall. They glide inches above the swell without a single wing beat. Theirs is the only pelican in the world that hunts by diving. The impact stuns the catch. Air sacs under the skin keep the bird from breaking itself on the water. A pouch under the bill scoops up several gallons at once. DDT thinned their eggshells until the species nearly vanished and the ban brought it back. They drift south each winter toward the last town before the California line. Brookings gets a downslope wind that can leave it warmer in winter than in summer. People call the pocket the banana belt. Fields here grow nearly all the Easter lily bulbs sold in the country. A Japanese float plane firebombed the forest above town, the only enemy aircraft to bomb the mainland. The pilot came back years later and handed over his family's samurai sword. It hangs in the town library, and the city made him an honorary citizen. Boats work the river mouth for salmon and rockfish, and the fish houses fry it by the basket. That river runs out of the Kalmiopsis backcountry, and its name is the Chetco River. The water reads pale jade over stone up in the headwaters. Salmon and steelhead push up it in season. Oregon's northernmost coast redwoods grow along its banks upriver. A lightning strike here started what became the biggest fire burning in the country that summer. Roughly a quarter of the redwoods that were badly burned. The town below draws its drinking water straight out of this channel. It reaches the sea beside the most filmed beach on this half of the coast. Harris Beach spreads sand between sea stacks and arch rocks along the state's last miles. Tide pools open across the shelf whenever the tide drops. Sea stacks catch the light at sunset and turn the water gold. Nesting seabirds cover the rocks offshore in spring. McVeigh Rock draws almost nobody, though agates turn up in its gravel every winter. The rock marks the edge of a low-tide shelf of wind-scoured basalt. Storms hit this ground before anywhere else in Oregon. Tide pools fill the flats around it at every low tide of the year. A state park behind the beach carries the name too. Agate hunters can walk this shelf, but the ground offshore belongs entirely to birds. Goat Island is the largest island off the Oregon coast, and nobody may set foot on it. It carries the biggest seabird colony in the state. Storm petrels burrow into the soil at the top and only fly in after dark. Nothing else lands here, and the oddest arrival wears a beak like a painted mask. tufted puffins dig long burrows down into the soil on that island. Both parents take turns underground with a single chick. Oregon has lost most of its puffins in living memory, and this rock still holds a few. This is the Oregon coast, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of Minnesota, check out this video.